Hello everyone, I hope you're keeping well. Hope you're staying home, staying safe. My name's Sinead Crumlish and I'm going to give you a photography tutorial today. So this is through Bluebell Arts Project. If you want to contact them, the email is bluebellartsproject@hotmail.com. The phone number is 028 71 262 812. So we're going to start with complete basics. I think it helps people if you understand exactly what's happening inside the camera. So we're going to start off by having a look at the ISO triangle. So these three things need to be in balance for a photograph to be properly exposed. So first off, we'll look at ISO. The ISO is the film or digital sensor's sensitivity to light. The same principles apply with film photography and digital photography. So what it means by that is, for example, it needs to be a really bright sunny day if you're using an ISO of 100. As there is less light available, that number will go up. So most of the time with our weather, around 400 is what you'll need to be using, unless we have some nice sunshine. Or snow actually creates a lot of light, so that would use 100 or 200 ISO as well. Then you have your other two variables, which are your f-stop and your shutter speed. So the f-stop is a bit I like to think of your lens a bit like your pupil, and I'll be showing you examples of this for it to make sense. But when it's dark, your pupil dilates to let more light in, so that your brain can receive the picture of what you're looking at, if that makes sense. And if it's a really, really bright sunny day, then your pupils shrink. So that's the same thing that's happening inside the camera, although you have to tell it because it can't do it on its own, like our brain does. And the other thing is the shutter speed. So that's how quickly the photograph is taken, how quickly the shutter opens and closes. So obviously if it closes opens and closes really fast, then that means there needs to be a lot of light for that light to get through and reach those sensors at the back of the camera or the film. A slower shutter speed will obviously leave the shutter open for a longer amount of time, allowing the light to come in for longer. But the downside to that is if it's too slow, you are going to wobble and shake. So don't go lower than a 1/60th of a second. I'm going to show you some examples of what I'm talking about now. So I've made a wee video for visual learners. If you're anything like me, you need to see what's happening inside the camera to understand it. So this is an old camera of mine. I wouldn't recommend doing it with your digital camera. It's broken. So we're starting off at f22, and I just want to show you how small the opening is for light to come through. That's down to f11 now, and you can see it's slightly opening a wee bit. And again, right down to f5.6 here, it's a lot more open, so more light can come through that way. And this camera goes down to 3.5. So I'm going to show you how the shutter works as well. So we'll start off with a thousandth of a second. I always struggle to say that. You can see how fast it is. You need a lot of light to be able to capture an image that fast. This is 500th of a second. Take it down to 125 now. You're only just about starting to be able to see the shutter actually opening. So I'm going to take it to 1/60th of a second. I recommend you never take it any lower than that when you're taking a photograph handheld. You'd need to use a tripod if you go any lower. .15th of a second. Just to show you. And I'm going to take it right down to bulb now so you can see what's happening inside the camera. So all of this is allowing light into the camera that's going to give you a properly exposed image. So here's an example of ISO as well. So if you look at this picture was taken at ISO 200. This is the other thing about ISO. It does affect the quality of the photograph, especially when it comes to digital photography. So you can see this is nice and clean and sharp. And then when the same photograph is taken with a higher ISO of 3200, you can see the actual pixels in the photograph. That's something that you sometimes will compromise. If it's really dark and you really want to take the photograph, you might compromise the quality. And I've made a little PowerPoint to show you here. Just get this opened up. So first off, we're going to look at ISO, and this will show you how ISO affects a photograph. So for the purpose of this, I've kept the camera at f4.5 and 1/60th of a second. I do not change those two. I'm only going to change the ISO. So this first photograph was taken at 100. Looks quite dark, doesn't it? It's going to get brighter there at 200. ISO 400. 800, which is now getting too bright. These photographs were taken in the daytime in a well-lit room. ISO 1000 and 1600, so that's totally overexposed. Now we're going to look at how aperture affects a photograph. So again, these are the same photographs. This time I kept the ISO at 200 and the shutter speed at 1/60th of a second, and the only thing I'm changing is the aperture, f-stop. So this is f2.8, 3.5, f4, f5.6, it's getting darker, f8, f11. Here is a visual example of how shutter speed affects your photograph. So here, 1/1000th of a second captures the water still. At 125th of a second, it's still quite still, but you can see a bit more of a blur from the movement of the water. A 25th of a second. Now these photographs, these last two, would have had to been taken on a tripod, because as you can see in the background, that's really, really sharp. It's just the water, the movement of the water, that has been blurred because it's quite a slow shutter speed there at 1/15th of a second. Another wee visual example of that. Are these wee windmills? So this will just get you started. Get to know your camera. Get to know your settings. If you can use it manually, that's when you're going to get your best results. I'm going to leave this on the screen. Obviously you can pause and have a look at it. Here are your camera settings. So I've been explaining the ISO triangle, which is when you have your camera fully manual. What I would suggest is, first off, choose your ISO, which if you're taking during the daytime, it's probably going to be around 400 to 400, and then you can decide what f-stop and what shutter speed you need to get that right balance. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you've always got aperture priority or shutter priority, and then lots of cameras have these automatic settings as well. But now that we have this time at home, why not practice getting to know how to use your camera manually? So I really hope that was useful to you. We haven't really looked at depth of field yet. We'll look at that in the next lesson, how that affects photography. So for now, I'd ask you to familiarise yourself with your camera in manual settings. If you can get to know your camera well enough that you know how to change the settings regularly, you'll know how to get better photographs, and we'll look at composition as well. So good luck, keep practicing, and see you soon.